Thank you very much. You're welcome to the Kaduna State Debating Society. In today's version of the video, we're going to be giving feedbacks on the recent video we posted about the debate on the topic, "This House would ban the consumption of alcohol." And if you have watched the video, I would advise you listen attentively. And if you're a coach watching this video and you have additional issues, you can openly place forward your suggestions and corrections to this. We are very open to correction. Thank you very much. So without wasting much time, I would like to first announce that the video was coaching free. The students prepared everything by themselves without the interference of their coach, that's myself. Because I wanted the video to be as raw as possible. I wanted them to make the mistakes students make when preparing for a debate so that I would have an opportunity to correct them. So without wasting much time, the first speaker, proposition Anaxabubakar. Anaxabubakar came up with very good strategy of giving us the analysis of how they are going to ensure that this ban is free and fair and how they are going to implement this ban. They brought us a policy that says they are going to put a complete ban on the consumption of alcohol, and this is very legitimate. So the first thing is that I felt that from Awal's arguments, we should have had more on the death tolls, the people that die annually from the consumption of alcohol. Awal mentioned that alcohol is one of the top 10 causative agents of death globally. You see, this is a very big issue. We are talking about millions of people dying here. I had expected from Awal more deliverance, more details on how this is very bad, and this itself being one of the reasons why they must ban alcohol as the government to protect not just the society, not just the people, but even the economy of the state. Because when people die, you lose active citizens. Some of them are of the working class, and there are a lot of things I felt that are left out that would have given more weight to the loss and the death toll that results from consumption of alcohol. Apart from that, is the issue of the policies they brought. They mentioned that the World Health Organization is going to be responsible for passing this policy through legislation and Congress of countries to consider and pass on laws that ban consumption of alcohol. But then I felt this particular policy lacks proper details, like proper explanation. More details should have been given to how the World Health Organization is going to carry these activities out and how they are going to approach nations with such a proposition. They also mentioned that they're going to give firms and industries that manufacture or produce alcoholic beverages a chance to switch over to non-alcoholic beverages or other products, or they are going to shut down the company. I feel this is a little strict from them, as you have noticed in the arguments. From the opposition side, a lot of issues arise from this particular policy in their model. I felt that they should have given more details and more flexibility in this. They could have asked them that they're going to give a particular grace period, a year, 2 or 5, for those factories to change the consumer taste into other products that are non-alcoholic. I felt something like that should have been done in order to make the policy a little more flexible. Also, the issue of points they brought. Awal brought about the issue of legitimacy, which is a very important issue in today's debate. But I felt that Awal should have hit the issue of legitimacy harder. We need more explanations on how other measures taken in order to minimize the risks that come with alcohol consumption fail. For example, rehabilitation, free orientation programs, like the opposition team mentioned. I had expected in Awal's point about legitimacy more explanation on how that failed and why the ban is going to be the only solution that will work more efficiently than any other solution they are going to bring. Because if they are talking about a complete ban, the legitimacy matters a lot in the argument. Then Awal mentioned during his case division that he was going to talk about the negative impact on the economy. but that hardly came in his argument. So that shows that Awal should have been given more consideration to time minimization. Awal should have taken more time in explaining this point and reduce some of the things that are less important that he has been hitting about legitimacy in his debate, which in the end did not have the weight it was expected to. So that was it about Awal. Awal did a pretty good job as a first speaker, and I know as a coach I am pretty new to this. If you have any suggestion about Awal's speech, we are very open to your suggestion. Then moving forward to the first speaker opposition, Joy Victor. You see, in Joy's arguments, there were a lot of inconsistencies and misinterpretations of what Awal's policies were. Because the first thing Joy came out with as the first speaker opposition were rebuttals on the policies and the model they brought about the World Health Organization passing on laws to countries. But then they misquoted them because they said the World Health Organization was going to pass these laws through Congress of countries, not necessarily themselves making legal laws for these countries. So Joy should have listened a little more careful, although there's a blame to be put on Awal for not clarifying this in more details also. They came out with an argument that says the ban is not going to be effective, but then they also mentioned that they are going to use harm reduction, treatment, rehabilitation, and awareness campaigns. But there's one thing they were leaving out in their argument. There's one thing Joy left out in her argument. You see, you should have explained to us properly how you are going to carry out those awareness campaigns and relate how these awareness campaigns are going to be effective in minimizing the harms caused by alcohol consumption, since you're not going to ban it. I felt that even after Joy mentioning in their policy, just like our, how they are going to use awareness campaign, enforcement, treatment, harm reduction, without necessarily banning alcohol to curb the problems, but we didn't hear proper explanation or details on how specifically they are going to do this and how this is going to help in curbing the problem. So please take note, when you're given an explanation to a point or a policy you're given, you need to relate how that policy is going to solve the problem with that motion. Joy did a very good job in giving rebuttals to some of the arguments I will mention. Also, Joy mentioned that the legal system during her rebuttal is not going to be able to keep up with the ban. This is a very important argument I expected from Joy's side, but then towards the end of her speech, we heard very little about how the legal system would not be able to keep up, because it is a major threat posed to their policy of complete ban. If the legal system of the country is not going to keep up, that means that another major problem is going to arise from their resolve and policy in curbing the problems related to alcohol consumption, which would have turned out to be a major issue that decides the winner of the debate. Also, Joy mentioned that countries gaining from alcohol production. This is a very important point too, because there are many economies that thrive on production of alcohol. Not necessarily completely on that, but a major fraction of some economies thrive on production of alcohol and its consumption. So if you're going to ban, what are you going to do to those economies? Countries that depend on this, what are you going to do to them, and how are you going to tackle the situation that will arise from the ban? I had expected Joy to give more explanation on this, but we had very little on that. So most of the problems Joy and Awal faced in their arguments were lack of proper analysis and in-depth explanation to the issues they brought forward to the House. Also, Joy also mentioned the prohibition era, which is a very nice job, and the principle of demand and supply, and then also how black markets are going to arise from the ban. You see, this is a very counter argument against the policy made by Team Proposition, But then Joy did not give us proper analysis on how this is going to put a stop towards the goal team proposition is trying to achieve by putting on the ban. Because if black markets and then illegal production of alcohol is going to arise, and as they mentioned, the war on illegal production of things and black market is a very tough one to win, would have been a major decider of who is going to win this argument. Also, why people take alcohol and the issues of depression. I felt this argument lacked proper details. I gave little consideration to it because it lacked in-depth details on how those issues properly affect the debate they had today. I felt that it didn't matter very much because there was not much details to how it was, and they were also leaving out the possibility that there are people out there who take alcohol simply for the fun of taking it without necessarily having any depression or problem to take the alcohol. That is Joy. And I also felt that the heroin issue they brought from Switzerland, the example, lacked proper details too. Most of the points Joy gave lacked proper details. That is the major problems, her points and Awol's points. And then the second speaker proposition, Abigail Thomas. The second speaker did a pretty amazing job in making corrections to statements Joy made on issues relating to problems that consumption of alcohol bring about. Joy made the assumption that they are not supposed to have a debate on whether or not there are problems related to consumption of alcohol. They're supposed to have a debate on whether or not the ban is the ultimate solution. But then it was very wise of Abigail to bring back the House to the fact that it is the problems associated to the consumption of alcohol that lead to the debate about the banning of the consumption of alcohol itself. So those problems still pose a serious threat to society, and they play an important role in the debate they have today. Also, Abigail brought about the issue of limiting life expectancy, which to me played a very major role in deciding which side of the debate carried more weight and bring more convincing arguments that are more realistic. Because consumption of alcohol comes with several health implications, several health risks. But then I felt Abigail's analogy or examples of 14-year-old teenager taking alcohol and limiting his life expectancy is a little underhanded. She should have used a legal age drinker, because you cannot have a functional argument when you are using underage drinkers. Team opposition could have easily come up with counter arguments against this, telling her that it is the fault of parents or the society for allowing an underage child of 14 years old to take alcohol. But then nevertheless, that didn't completely hinder that point from making the impact it was supposed to make in the debate, because of the implications of limiting the life expectancy of the population of a particular state or nation. There are many implications to this. As a coach, when she mentioned this, I was very happy that my students are able to come up with this, but I felt that her examples are a little underhanded. And the issues of unemployment she brought played a major role too in the arguments, but it also lacked proper weight. I had wanted proper details and linkage between unemployment and moving society backwards and the harms directly associated with consumption of alcohol. I had expected a clear link, although there wasn't. Unemployment still played a very important role in deciding which side of the house carried more weight. Also, she talked about the dark side of alcohol consumption, being drunk, a person raping their daughters, or people doing psychotic acts or resulting to violence because they are not in their right senses. This is a major problem in this debate, because the original manifestation of violence resulting from consumption of alcohol or road accidents that result to deaths or fatalities or victims and casualties is one of the major reasons why we had the debate today on the consumption of alcohol. So I felt Abigail should have put more details on how this is a direct issue that affects society and its direct link to consumption of alcohol, and how this is a justifiable reason for them to completely ban alcohol, even if banning alcohol comes with certain limitations. So that is it about Abigail, second speaker, proposition. Now moving to third speaker, proposition, Muhammad Musa Lawal. Sorry, second speaker, opposition, Muhammad Musa Lawal. Muhammad came out with a very nice entry, despite the fact that it was his first debate, but there were some very good points he made mention of. For example, the issue of religious practices. This is a very important issue in today's debate, because whenever a government is banning something, some of the major issues that arise are cases that have to do with issues of infringement of rights of people to consume alcohol. If you're banning alcohol, what about the people that have the right to consume alcohol? For example, some religious practices that deal with consumption of alcohol to connect to afterlives or to connect to their deity. You see, this is going to be a major problem with propositions arguments, because if you are going to ban consumption of alcohol and there are religions that practice consumption of alcohol as a holy activity, you're going to infringe on their right to practice of religion. So unless you bring justifiable reasons that carry more weight than the right of an individual to practice their religion, you don't have a right to stop them from that. Unless you're going to bring societal harms that outweigh this, you cannot necessarily prove that you have the right to stop these people from practicing their religion. I felt this is a very good point, but it lacked more detail. It lacked connection to the reason why you cannot go on an outright ban, because you're going to infringe on these people's right to religion. Although on a peripheral and floating level, this hardly connects, but when you look at it deep, it is a very good point. Also, Muhammad brings about the cases of hate crimes, how this is going to result to hate crimes, but we had very little details about this after he mentioned it. I felt this is a very important case on his side, and he should have given more details to how, if you are going to ban people from practicing some of their religious practices, this is going to make these people result to hate certain things about society, and it's not going to turn out very well. How people are going to turn to other forms of drugs if necessarily there are problems of depression and societal social problems that lead people to want to stay away from their problems by taking alcohol, and you ban consumption of alcohol, that they're going to resolve to taking other forms of drugs that would make them feel the same sensation of forgetfulness towards their real life problems. That was a very good point, but it also lacked proper explanation and details. Also, Muhammad, you left out a lot of things of people taking alcohol and wanting to take it again. The issue of addiction. You see, when this debate started, I had expected issue of addiction to come up properly as one of the major reasons why team proposition is going to ban consumption of alcohol, because if there is addiction, then taking alcohol is not necessarily always a fair choice of a person. This is something that the students should have looked into properly, but there was very little explanation of that. Also, now moving to third speaker proposition, Mary Emmanuel. Mary Emanuel's overall third speech was convincing and very good. The issue of health problems was a very good job done by Mary, and then how she corrected the misunderstanding had by team opposition on their policy about the World Health Organization passing these laws through legislation and Congress of countries. Was a very job well done. She also mentioned the issue of death toll, which I mentioned earlier should have been a major issue in today's debate. She mentioned that 33.3 million people die annually from alcohol-related health complications or alcohol-related issues. That is 5.9% of total global mortality rate. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when a substance results in 5.9% of global mortality rate, it becomes a very important issue for us to consider that substance and reevaluate our choice in letting people consume it. But then there was very little analysis and link to why that is a direct reason why we need to ban alcohol consumption. Because if you look at these statistics and analogy made by the third speaker, it should have come earlier from their side of the debate through the first or second speaker, not the third speaker. Mary's overall third speech was okay, but then I felt that Mary could have improved her third speech by rounding up issues that revolved around the arguments brought up from the first speaker proposition to her speech and given justification to why her side of the debate has been doing a better job as a third speaker. Your job is not only to do plain rebuttals from beginning to the end, one point after another. You're also expected to round up things and tell us why specifically your side of the debate has done more justice. Then moving to the third speaker opposition, Nathaniel Adam. Nathaniel has done a very good job rounding up three questions. You could all tell that these questions matter a lot in how this debate turns out to be. But then Nathaniel's rebuttals were very little. I felt that Nathaniel could have taken more points to give rebuttals to, like some of the very faint issues that came up from team proposition, like the issue of addiction and the issue of legitimacy. There were many loopholes in those arguments, and I felt Nathaniel should have taken the advantage and given proper rebuttals to this. On an average scale, Nathaniel's third speech was very good. The rounding up the arguments to three questions and using these three questions to advantage of his side was very good as a third speaker. Nathaniel also made mention of some very important issues that came up in the debate, like the issue of withdrawal syndrome. When people have been taking alcohol for quite a considerable amount of time, you cannot just eavesdrop one day and decide to ban consumption of alcohol, which I made mention initially with team's propositions models problem, because they are not being as flexible as possible if they are just going to give an outright ban without a grace period. So this argument about withdrawal syndrome came up because of team proposition's inability to give a grace period for people to adjust and lack of rehabilitation policies on their side of the debate to help people that are already addicted to consumption of alcohol. Nathaniel did a very good job, and I also felt that he could have put more weight on this particular issue, and the issue should have even come up through first or second speaker first before Nathaniel using it to an advantage during rebuttals. Then the reply speech opposition from Joy Victor was a nice one, but I also felt that Joy Victor shouldn't have emphasized on issues relating to not having a recording device to verbatively quote what team proposition said. She was obviously misunderstanding, and I agree that sometimes during a debate, debaters get carried away by what they want to say on stage and overlooking some of the things that their opponents say, which will play a very important role. So the issue of team proposition not being fair to them on this side of the debate was not true. but then it was a very good attempt for Joy Victor to defend her side, isn't that? Joy Victor's third reply speech was very much less a reply speech than a third speech, because in a reply speech you're expected to do adjudication on your side, tell the House how your team has successfully given superior arguments, if not superior argument, how you are able to always defend your arguments to the end, which makes them superior to the arguments brought forward from beginning to the end of your opponent's arguments. I also felt that Joy Victor should have taken more caution in saying that there are other problems we need to tackle in society, not just alcohol. That is deviating from what the original argument today is about. Like they mentioned throughout their debate in the second speech, Team Proposition said that there are other problems, but if they want to solve these problems, they'll do it in another debate. So Joy Victor, in her reply speech, mentioning other problems like world hunger, terrorism, unemployment, is somehow to her disadvantage, because it doesn't necessarily add up to what goes on in the debate. Also, she made mention of the examples they were given are Arab countries. You see, debaters make this mistake of deciding by themselves what certain facts about countries and issues in the world are. That is why debaters are always advised to keep up with global happenings and be very current with what is happening in the world. You're not allowed to make certain assumptions that are incorrect or factually misquoted. There are a lot of issues you have to consider before declaring a country an Arab country or a Muslim country or not. Also, life expectancy and global warming. If you're going to bring more problems relating to the problems your opponents bring, you have to use them to your advantage. I felt that the issue of global warming was completely out of line. So, Joy Victor, please work very hard on your reply speech, and debaters, please note some of those mistakes. The reply speech from Team Proposition was the best reply speech from this argument, and I have to give it to Awa. He has done a very good job in his reply speech on comparing the arguments that came up throughout the debate and how he believed his side of the debate won the argument. Nevertheless, there are no winners, no losers in the debating society. Everybody is a winner, but of course, in every debate, there are judges to tell you who wins the debate or not. For this round of the debate, we won't be doing that. So if you have more suggestions or corrections on some of the corrections I've made or some of the mistakes the students made in the debate, we are very open, and you can do it in the link below or send it to the email address or in the comment section. Thank you very much. The Kaduna State Debating Society wish to see more debates like this in the future, and I would like to use this opportunity to thank the Honorable Commissioner of Education, Malan Jafaru, for giving us the opportunity to establish such a team and manage it directly under his ministry, and the Kaduna State government for sponsoring us all of the time we are invited to debating competitions on and offshore of this country. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you in our next video. Try to join the debating society. Thank you.